Greetings, Bat Family, and welcome back to Holy BatCast, brought to you by Real Fans for Real Movies. You can find us all over social media on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. Just search for Holy BatCast, you'll find us. If you're a fan of the show and you want to support us in a more official way, you can do that on Patreon. You can go to patreon.com/HolyBatCast. As always, a big thank you to our patrons. You guys are awesome. You know, you don't have to do it, but it just means the world that you do. So I really do appreciate every single one of you who took that extra step, went to Patreon, and decided to help support us, because it just makes it that much easier. It really takes a load off. So thank you to our patrons. You guys rock. We're part of the Real Fans Podcast Network. You can check out all those shows at rf4rm.com. And as always, I'm your Bat host, Andy DiGenova. You can find me on Instagram, Threads, and Letterboxd. It's always just my name, Andy DiGenova. And this is exciting because this episode, it's not just news. It's not some random thing. We have brand new Batman content to talk about and to celebrate. We have a new Batman animated series. We've been waiting for a few years, but it is here. Batman Caped Crusader has arrived on Prime Video, and we're here to talk about it. And I don't want to talk about it by myself because that'd be boring and I'll be really sad. Fortunately, my good pal, my Bat brother, he is back and he's watched some Caped Crusader too. It's Jamie Turley. Hey, Jamie.
Good evening, everybody. It's exciting to have some new Batman content in our lives. Since we're kind of dragging on the big screen, we're going to have a little bit of small screen, which, you know what? Most of my activity in watching stuff is all small screen these days, so I'm not opposed to that.
Good. I agree. Like, it's one of those things where, like, it had been promised for so long where I was just like, yeah, whatever, you know? And then it's finally here, and I'm like, oh, yeah, yay, exciting, a new Batman show.
I really wasn't that excited for it, to be honest.
Oh, well, we're going to get there in just a second. Yeah, we're going to get there. So, yes, we're going to talk about Batman Caped Crusader. We both watched some episodes. So just to give you guys kind of a little rundown of what the plan is, we're going to talk a little bit about our impressions of the show, just overall, spoiler-free. And then we're going to dive into the first 3 episodes of the show. That way, on a slow week, we can dive back in and do a couple more, something like that. It's also nice, Jamie, to start reviewing a Batman animated series in real time.
That is a very... Usually we're hopping in the DeLorean to go check them out.
That has never happened in the history of Holy BatCast. Is this show has never run concurrently with a Batman animated show.
That is so weird to think about because we've been doing this for, what,
over 10 years. Over 10 years. Well, what year was Beware the Batman?
I want to say 12 or 13, but don't quote me on that.
But we started the show in 14. So yeah, it was already in the rearview mirror at that point. So anyway, yeah, it's a bit of a special occasion, new Batman show. We get to talk about it in real time, new Batman content out there for everybody who has Prime, which I think is like mostly everybody, right? I feel like, you know, we all have Prime. I have it for the free shipping, but then the streaming is just a nice bonus.
My daughter asked me the other day, she's like, how much do you pay for Amazon Prime? I said, I think it's like $120 a year. She's like, oh my God, that's so much. I'm like, yeah, $10 a month for the amount of things that we have shipped to this house.
Exactly.
Plus all the stuff that we watch on their service. Yeah, that's way too much.
It's totally worth it. All right, so here we go. Batman Caped Crusader. Again, this show has been in development for a few years now. I can't even remember. Oh, here we go. It was first announced May of 2021. So it's been over 3 years since it was initially announced. Was that part of fandom? I at least know that they like hyped it up in fandom. I can't remember if that was when they announced it or not.
So I listened to the most recent episode of our pals over at the Fire Rises, Joe and Eric, and they talked about some episodes of the show as well. And I just kind of wanted to see what some people's thoughts were about it that I knew, because I'd seen a lot of people who I don't necessarily know as well talk about it, like in the Real Fans groups and stuff. And I'm like, well, I wonder what my people think about this. So I kind of, delved into their show. And Joe did say it was announced at Fandom. So.
Okay, I thought it was, but again, that all might be a little bit fuzzy. Yeah, I have not listened to their episode because I don't want it to color any of my opinions or thoughts on the show. I will listen to it after I do this.
Fair enough.
And then we'll see how we match up. But anyway, yes, so it was announced over 3 years ago. It was for Max, and then, all that stuff. It ended up on Prime, whatever. We don't have to go rehashing all that old stuff. But going into the premiere, you said something interesting because I think that we saw eye to eye on this is I was interested, but I wasn't necessarily excited. How did you feel?
Pretty much the exact same. I mean, it's Batman, so of course I'm going to contribute some of my time to it, no matter what. But yeah, I mean, the promotional stuff and the stills and everything like that, none of it got me excited for the show. I was just like, I'll be perfectly honest with you, and I should never make this assumption because you know what they say about making assumptions. You make an ass out of you and umption. So
I was long kiss goodnight. I know what you did.
Attaboy. I'm so happy you picked up on that. Love that movie. That's an annual cheer-a-thon watch.
Hell yeah.
Gina Davis should do all action movies. But anyway, I was a little concerned that Max passed on it and let Prime have it. I thought, oh my God, what's going on here? That Max doesn't want Batman content on their streaming service. I know it's not a reality show, which is apparently the only thing frickin' Zaslav think makes money. So at any rate, I was a little apprehensive because of that reason, because somehow my mind automatically equated it that maybe there's a quality issue with this, and that's why Max didn't want to drop any dough for it,
Interesting.
Yeah. So I didn't have any hype for it. I was just like, I was turned on the TV like 2 days after it was released. Of course, I'd seen a couple comments in the Real Fans group, like I said, and I was like, all right. So I turned it on, and the very first thing I see when I turn on my Fire Stick in the bedroom is #1 on Amazon Prime, and it had the picture of Batman on. Mm-hmm. And I was like, oh, wow, people are really into this show. So I went ahead and watched an episode. Then I watched another one. Then I watched another one. And, well, I don't know how deep you want me to get into it now, but yeah, I just coming in. No, I was not there with it.
Yeah. So the whole like Max versus Prime thing is its own thing, but I understood why they did it. I just didn't like why they did it, if that makes sense. It wasn't because they thought the show was going to be bad. It's because there was more money to be made in selling the show to another service than to just host it on their own service.
I am curious how much of a regret they have on that at this point. Because I have no doubt that Prime paid out the wazoo for it, but, thinking in the long game.
Yeah. Well, and that's its own debate, but I know that's why they did it. Is they're like, well, okay, we can pay to produce the show and put it on Max, and what that does is it provides content for our subscriber base. Is it going to drive new subscriptions? Barely at best. Or we can produce it and sell it to another streaming service who will then pay us, and then we have very definite and countable income based on the show, as opposed to like, sort of reading the tea leaves of the value of it on Max on your own service. Anyway, I believe that was really why.
That makes sense. But my mind immediately thought the worst of it. So
sure.
You know a lot more of the inside outs of the business than I do. I'm more of a casual, if you will, in that realm. So you have the quick mind to immediately draw that conclusion, whereas I have to hear you say it in order for it to be like, oh, that makes sense.
Well, I've heard someone make this analogy before because, everybody started their own streaming service except for Sony. And Sony said, you know what? Y'all can have your streaming services. We'll just sell you content so you can have those on your streaming services. And so essentially all the other studios are at war and Sony's just selling guns. And that's kind of like right now, Warner Brothers Discovery seems to have 1 foot in, 1 foot out. Like 1 foot of them is that, no, we got our own streaming service Max and we have to have content for that. But also, let's not put all of our content on there because we can also make money, active revenue, by selling it to other people. Anyway, we'll see how that strategy works out for them. That's the point. But there is good talent involved. It's a very interesting trio here of Bruce Timm, Matt Reeves, and J.J. Abrams, but all very talented people in their own right. And it was interesting to think of like, what does that combination look like? But leading up to the release of the show, first of all, it took forever for us to get anything more than that one poster, right? But then we got the character designs, and I was like, huh, I don't love them. I don't hate them, but I don't love them. Okay. Um, and I couldn't get that excited about it. And then the trailer was the first thing that made me really go, oh, wow, that does look really cool. I do like that. And then the clip we talked about last time, that finally started to work for me where I was like, okay, this could be something really cool.
The clip really got my attention because, as I mentioned on that episode, that moment where he's dangling the dude in front of the train trying to interrogate him about who was responsible for blowing up the buildings, that really felt like a Batman moment to me.
Yeah, indeed. Absolutely. And so
I should say, to be fair, that was the moment where I was like, okay, this show might have something going on.
Yeah. Because even in the trailer, and we talked about it on the show, and it was an episode that you weren't on because you didn't see the trailer, but even then I was like, wow, they're doing a very different thing. They're doing a very Elseworlds version. I don't know how into it I am. I respect what they're going for. I just don't know if it's my thing. So I walked in a little trepidatious, but also hopeful. And so now it is here. And like you, I watched the first few episodes, but you asked me before we hit record how many I've watched. I've watched 3.
Really?
Yeah. So, Harley's real excited in the other room. I apologize.
Harley's trying to tell you what I'm about to tell you, but please continue.
It's bath time. So I watched the first 3 the day it came out. But because they dropped all 10 episodes, I was like, no, I want to enjoy myself. I don't want to rush through them. I want to take my time. And so I watched the first 3 and then I made myself stop. And I'm like, well, I'm going to switch to something else. And then next weekend, I'll watch another 1 or 2. And then next weekend, I'll watch another 1 or 2. So I've been showing very good self-control. And then we talked about doing this episode and we decided we're going to review the first 3. So then I just watched the first 3 again. So right now, as of this recording, I've only seen the first 3 episodes. I've seen them each twice. So there are things to come that I have not seen yet, and I can only speak to the first 3. But again, for me, that's kind of fun. I'm just letting myself take my time through it. It was a very intentional choice.
Okay. So we took a bit of a different approach there in that I watched the one episode and then another and then another. And the bottom line with me at this point is I'm 9 episodes through it.
All right.
I did that in 2 days.
Mm-hmm.
I won't watch the 10th episode because I don't want to be done with the show.
Who are you, Scott Hopkins?
Yes. I'm going full Scotty on this series right now.
He refuses to watch series finales.
I'm probably going to wait until sometime in the fall, maybe even after Scarathon, before I watch the 10th episode. I say that, but my restraint won't allow me to do it, or lack of restraint, I should say. But I'm tearing through the episodes of this show very, very quickly.
Well, then keep going. If you watched 9 out of 10 in 2 days, how are you enjoying yourself?
With the exception to one massive flaw that this show has, which I'm hoping gets rectified sooner than later. I'll address that more later. I am all but prepared at this point to declare this neck and neck with Batman the Animated Series.
Wow. All right.
I am loving this show. I don't know how else I can say it. I'm blown away by what the show is delivering to me. And I don't think it's perfect. I think there's a few things that kind of make me scratch my head here and there. But the characterization of Batman, the performance, the voice, pretty much all of the characters across the board, Montoya, Gordon, Barbara, Harvey Dent, even the Penguin, the Penguin, that was such an odd choice in my opinion. And I'm still not exactly certain why that decision was made, although the Fire Rises guys did have that discussion as well. And I don't remember which one brought it up, if it was Joe or Eric, but they basically said, with Penguin being kind of a hot button in the Reeves world right now, they probably did this to distance this show from the Reeves universe. just to know that this very clearly was not involved in that universe and this was not the same Penguin, which makes sense. You know, Matt Reeves' name being attached to this was obviously a big push as it was coming up on it. So maybe people would be operating under the assumption that this was like an animated bridge or sequel or prequel or something like that to the film. And they did that so that there was absolutely no mistaking it, which, you know, to me kind of makes sense, I suppose. But yeah, I mean, it's some different and interesting choices, but I love the character work in this show. And that is so important for me, you know, great writing and entertainment value and all that. I love all that stuff, but the character work in this show for me at this point, 9 episodes in, it's on par with Batman the Animated Series. I'm watching this thinking the same thing I did when we reviewed so many episodes of Batman the Animated Series. How are they cramming this much into a 23, 24-minute runtime?
Yeah.
So color me impressed. I'm way into this.
Awesome. Well, I am also very impressed, and I really, really like it. I'm not ready to call it equal to Batman the Animated Series, but it's really damn good, and I am so happy that I like it as much as I did. It's great. I could have easily burned through all 10 episodes last weekend. I could have, but I didn't, because I enjoyed it that much. I'm with you. I think it's a great show. It is unmistakably Batman, but yes, they are very much doing their own thing. And there are interesting choices, but like so far, only 3 episodes in, I'm on board for all those choices. I like the twists and turns they are giving to some of these beloved and well-known characters because it's just enough to make it its own thing, but none of it is so far where they cease being the character you already know and love. I think that Batman is great. We talked about it, I think, last time, but especially now that we've actually seen full episodes, I think Hamish Linklater is terrific in the voice. I think he does a great, great job. I think all the voice work is terrific. I like the designs. I think the animation is beautiful, and it definitely has its own vibe, but it is still like a very cool, noir, old school Batman. So yeah, when I watched that first one, I'm like, oh my God, this is really good. Well done. And yeah, I mean, you brought up the Penguin. I loved her. I thought she was great.
Yeah.
Who knows why the choice was made? I didn't think of that in terms of trying to distance itself from the Reevesverse, but I don't know. When you watch the show, I wouldn't relate any of it to the Reevesverse. I just wonder how much of it is just sort of leveling the playing field of making sure they have more female characters. And it's like, well, the Penguin's never been a physical threat to Batman anyway. So it doesn't really matter if the Penguin is male or female. And it's just a way to, play with the character and do something a little different. And we haven't got to that episode yet, but I thought it was great. I loved her. I thought she was really entertaining. She was scary. She was good. So all the changes they have made so far, again, only 3 episodes in, I'm on board for. I have a couple small nitpicks. But they're pretty minor because overall, I'm really digging it. And I also had a little bit of a concern. It was in the back of my head. So I didn't even know how conscious it was. But like Bruce Timm had said some things about, oh, I'm doing all the stuff they wouldn't let me do when I did Batman the Animated Series.
That's a scary thought because that cat's mind can get a little far out sometimes.
And that's exactly it. We love Bruce Timm. He's brilliant. We love him. But like he can get like overly adult for no good reason, if that makes sense. Obviously the Killing Joke is sort of the prime example of that, but lots of stuff. If you dig into some of his other work, he's, he goes places and more power to him. But I didn't want that to happen with this Batman show. I didn't want him to make it too adult just because they would let him. Right. And so far, that is not the case. Nothing feels like it's pushing the envelope just because they can, just to try and be edgy. Everything feels like a really nice, balanced version where it's dark, it's scary, but there's fun in there. And, there's action and there's certainly violence, but it never feels excessive. Like balanced is the best way I can put it. And I really dig it. And going with this very old school 1930s, 1940s time period, whereas like BTAS, they mix the time period. So it could kind of be timeless, could be at any point in time. Here, it seems like it was a very conscious decision of, oh no, this is like 1940.
Well, I mean, the surroundings and the general feel of it definitely fit that mold, but there are some things that lead me to think along the same lines as Batman the Animated Series, in that yes, it is very throwback noir, but it's also a lot of modern tech. So I mean, people have car phones. That was not a thing in the 1930s. So that's just the one example that pops in my head. There were one or two other things I caught that said, well, that's definitely not a 30s thing. That's a more modern thing. So they're just kind of toying with it as they will. They've created their own world and their own universe, and they have that very retro feel, but they're not isolating themselves where they can't expand within it. And I like that. I like that a lot.
So I don't know if the car phone was in the first couple episodes, because I was paying attention to the phones specifically to see if anyone was going to pull out a cell phone or anything. So maybe that didn't happen yet. But like even in the Batcave, there's no Bat computer. It's just a map. It's a map and a desk and a little laboratory, but there's no computer. So I just thought that was very like, oh, okay, they're being much more old school deliberately. But again, maybe as the episodes progress and I watch more of them, they start to weave in a little bit more of that.
Well, even the map is kind of a digitized thing, because he has like the red borders around the things that he's investigating at points. And I'm sorry if I'm getting ahead of where you're at, but
So
again, I don't feel like it's. You can definitely take it either way. You can definitely take it as it's just its own universe, or you can take it as it's taking place back then, and some of this tech is just at its cutting edge or whatever.
yeah. And there's like a little bug that he plants on, I think it's Montoya, he plants it on. And that's like, of course, I don't think you can make a bug that small in the 40s, but at the same time, it's like, it's drawn and designed in an archaic way enough that you're like, oh, well, Batman figured out a way back then. Anyway, regardless, making a more deliberate choice gives it its own feel. I think the animation is great. The animation style is very similar to Batman the Animated Series while still being its own thing.
You can very much take this as a spiritual successor to BTAS, or you can take it as its own thing, whichever way you want to go. I think that's kind of what you bring in is what you're going to take out. But I can definitely see a lot of the similarities stylistically.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, even especially the backgrounds, the style of Gotham and the city and the sky and everything, like it looks very evocative of those backgrounds from Batman the Animated Series. But in the best
no blimps so far, though. I haven't noticed any blimps.
Yeah, I guess you're right. No blimps. But yes, overall, again, I'm with you. I think it's great. I'm so glad it's great. I'm really enjoying it. I can't wait to get past episode 3 because that was my plan. But I'm glad I rewatched the first 3 because I enjoyed them even more, I think, the second time. And to your point, it was very valid is, Batman the Animated Series, the best episodes of those, you're like, wow, like they tell a very complete story in 22 minutes. And they do the same thing here, where it's an amazing the amount of ground they can cover and tell what feels like a very full adventure in a very short amount of time. There's efficiency in the storytelling, but it's very satisfying.
Mm-hmm. And this one, I'm not going to say Batman the Animated Series didn't do this, but so far there's kind of a focused through line with this one where all of the episodes are very clearly tied together because of characters' actions, reactions, events, things like that. It's definitely a long form story with smaller stories put in, which, most of your best television series, live action, animated, or whatever, they can do that. You'll have smaller episodic stories, and then you'll just have the longer through story that runs kind of through the whole season or through the whole show or whatever. And I think this one's doing a very masterful job at not sacrificing one for the other there, at least through the episodes that I've seen so far.
Yeah. So you said you have one big complaint. Is it like spoilery for the episodes? Or?
I don't know that I would consider it spoilery, but at the same time, I don't know if you're far enough into it to be with what I'm about to say about it.
Nah, it's okay. I'll see how it goes.
Okay, so my one major complaint, and I've got a few nitpicks here and there, but they're just not enough to really detract from me loving this show. But I have one critical problem with this show, and for the freaking life of me, I cannot understand why this choice was made. But I feel like some of the episodes are starting to lean toward rectifying it, so fingers crossed. But here we go. My biggest problem with this show so far is Bruce treats Alfred like the help instead of like a partner. He calls him Pennyworth.
Yeah.
He treats him like a dog. He contradicts everything. A lot of the things he says, he barks at him a lot. I just, so far, do not care for how Bruce is treating Alfred.
No, that's valid. And I noticed it, but it hasn't gotten too involved. But you're right. Like, I thought it was an interesting choice to call him Pennyworth, but I also thought that was just mixing it up. But yeah, I think that's an interesting observation.
And maybe, again, Andy, you know how I am. Sometimes when I watch things in a group like that, episodes will run together for me. So I know we're going to talk about 3 episodes specifically, but I'm going to kind of have you kick it off so I can remember I remember the first episode, but like 2 through 9 may run together for me on what happened where. So I'm going to kind of wait for your guidance there. So I don't know how much of it you've seen with their interactions, but there is a point where I feel like they're starting to address it. And hopefully it's going to come back around.
Okay. Yeah, I've seen a little bit of both. But there have been moments, it was the first episode. It's when Alfred drops off Bruce at the party at the Iceberg Lounge. And he says something like, make sure you have a good time tonight or something like that. And Bruce goes, is that a joke? And he goes, well, yeah, I guess it was. Something like that, where it was like a nice little back and forth between the two of them that felt very classic Bruce and Alfred. So there were moments of that, but then you're right. There were other moments where he's like, Pennyworth, do this. And so, yeah, you're right. Maybe it'll evolve and they'll find a nice balance.
Yeah. And I don't feel like the characterization of Alfred is off. Like, you can see there's a genuine care for Bruce, and you can see that he's truly there to help make this mission happen in the way that he can, but he still wants Bruce to be a human being at the same time. He doesn't just want him to be this, vengeance justice machine all the time. He wants him to be who he is. So in that, I think Alfred feels very natural and familiar, but the way Bruce treats him sometimes very much does not feel like that, because so much of what we know is Bruce being very compassionate toward him as a partner and a father figure. And there just has not been very much of that for me. And it's not sitting well with me. And that's really my chief complaint with the show.
All right. Well, something to keep an eye on. My little nitpicks are little nitpicks, and they're little nerdy nitpicks. The first one is the theme music. It's fine, but if you held a gun to my head and said, hum it right now, I would be a dead person, because it's just not memorable. Like, it's certainly moody, and I appreciate that. I just wish I wish the music played a bigger role and was a little more memorable and had a little bit more of a tune, if you will. So, comparing it to BTAS, and I'm sorry, we can't help it. I just think that that's a part where there's room for improvement, is to get a theme that is memorable.
So I appreciate the music. I won't even skip through the opening credits in the episode I've watched so far, because I'm enjoying just the look and feel and sound. Plus, I want to see who worked on the episodes, because there's some big names that have worked on some of these episodes so far. But it doesn't have the dynamic thing like a Tim Burton Batman theme or a Danny Elfman Batman theme. But the music that they're using, I feel, fits the world that they've got here.
Yeah.
So I agree with you. It's not particularly dynamic. I'm not going to turn it into the ringtone on my phone, but I feel like it's working for what they're presenting.
It definitely works for the mood and the vibe, and absolutely. Again, I just wish there was a more recognizable theme where you go, oh, that's the Batman Cape Crusader music. And right now, it's not that.
Fair enough.
And then the other one, this is real nerdy, but sorry, I'm going to just be honest. I just wish the car was cooler.
We agree on that point.
Yeah, it's fine. It's just like, give me some fins on there or something.
Refresh my memory. Is one of the episodes we're going to talk about the Catwoman episode or no?
Yes.
Catwoman has the coolest vehicle in the show.
Agreed.
And it's not, the second place ain't even close.
Yeah. I mean, the bad news is I think the car is a little plain, a little boring. The good news is it's going to save me money, because I feel no need to go buy a toy of it. So yeah, I mean, and again, it's something can evolve because this obviously takes place early in Batman's career, so maybe that will happen, and I'm all for it. I'm like, give me a little style, give me a little flash there, please. But
Yeah.
again, those are two pretty minor nitpicks because everything else, again, I've really been digging. The storytelling, the characterizations, again, that are different enough, but also classic enough, which I think is really good. Barbara Gordon and Harvey Dent, they are unique spins on those characters, but still feel faithful enough where I'm like, oh yeah, I see that as Barbara Gordon. She's a little older, she's a lawyer now, but I can see her personality there. And Harvey Dent, he's a little smarmier, he's a little slimier, but I still see that. And so far I'm really liking how creative they've gotten with the characters, but it all has been really entertaining to watch.
Yes. I think we're watching the same show.
So we're going to get into some episodes, but overall, we are really liking the show. Everybody out there, I mean, you're listening, you've probably already watched it, but just in case you haven't watched it, it's on Prime. All 10 episodes are right there for your enjoyment. You can watch them all in one sitting, or you can try to have some self-control like me and just parse it out over the next few weekends, make it last. It's up to you. No judgment either way. But it's out there. But we are going to talk about the episodes. And when we talk about the episodes, we're going to want to talk freely. So just know that there will be a spoiler warning in effect. We're just going to speak freely about the first 3 episodes. And then anybody who hasn't gone past that, I'll take that journey with you. So the very first one is called In Treacherous Waters. And they are kicking it off with the Penguin. So what's interesting is when it starts, it's like there's a guy he's like tied to a chair and he's going to be interrogated, and you see the Penguin just in silhouette. And I thought they were like setting it up to surprise us that the Penguin was a woman. But then when they do the reveal, it's not a reveal at all. It's just there she is in the middle of the boat singing a song, and it's just like, oh, no, never mind, there she is. So anyway, I just thought that was interesting. But we find out that there's a bit of a turf war in Gotham between Oswald Cobblepot, the Penguin, and her crime family, and Rupert Thorne's crime family. So Rupert Thorne has been experiencing some losses. Some of his buildings and operations have been blown up, and it's all thanks to the Penguin. Batman finds this out from that clip that we saw where he finds the fire inspector who's falsifying documents, and he hangs him in front of the train. He finds out the Penguin's behind this. And so the Penguin, aside from running a bunch of crime in Gotham, she's a bit of a showman. She's got the Iceberg Lounge. The Iceberg Lounge is on a boat, which I think is really cool and creative.
I was going to mention that. I think that was a brilliant take on the Iceberg Lounge.
Agreed. I thought because it's still the Iceberg Lounge, but how much fun to put it on a boat. I love it.
And they reveal that, and there's this massive umbrella on the top of it. I'm like, that's dopey as hell, but I still love it because it's like, hey, this is Penguin's boat. And we all know it because of the umbrella.
That's just it. It's a top hat and an umbrella on the Iceberg Lounge. But again, if it's the Iceberg Lounge and it's this really hot night spot for Gotham's elite, branding is part of that. So it isn't that weird for her to put her trademark hat and umbrella on top of it,
No.
And then we find out the umbrella there's a little more to that.
Indeed.
And so, yes, she is also hosting a fundraiser for Gotham's police. So we've got Barbara Gordon, we've got Jim Gordon. Earlier, we meet Barbara. She is a lawyer, again, going up against Harvey Dent with some of these criminals in Gotham. We find out they don't like each other, especially Barbara doesn't like Harvey. And they're at this fundraiser on the boat. The Penguin does this big performance, which is actually a ton of fun. We find out she's got 2 sons who are kind of her lieutenants in her crime family, but Rupert Thorne had escaped one of the explosions, and he strongly hints that one of her sons is the one who tipped him off. And so the Penguin kills one of her sons right then and there.
Very unexpected, but they set up very early that this may be some of the creative minds behind Batman the Animated Series, but this ain't Batman the Animated Series.
Yeah. But the way they do it, again, I feel like it's harsh and you're like, oh my God, but it's also, there's enough restraint where it doesn't feel like too much.
No, there's nothing gratuitous about it. It's just
Right, right,
this
right.
is part of the leash being off of Bruce Timm and him being able to do the things that he was not allowed to do. So there are real guns, there are actual deaths, there are bigger stakes involved in this show than there were in Batman the Animated Series. But this is definitely meant for an older generation versus, BTAS was very much aimed at, the 10 give or take age bracket when it was released. This
Yeah,
is probably more for, not only the people that grew up with Batman the Animated Series, but just for an older demographic in general. And I'm not saying it's not necessarily kid friendly because, again, nothing gratuitous. It's not like, decapitations and blood flying everywhere. And, there's a little bit of language, but I don't think it ever gets to the point where it gets super carried away. So they definitely set a tone here with, Penguin killing her son, that we can do a few things here that we couldn't get away with 30 years ago.
sure. Yep. So she kills the wrong son. We find out it was the other son who is the informant. And so now he is terrified. He goes to the police for help. He lets them know that she has this massive cannon on the boat and it can take out anything, including police headquarters. So she is going to take out police headquarters. And all this time, Batman, he shows up to the party as Bruce Wayne and then eventually as Batman to take down the Penguin. And even though she's a female, they do fight on the deck of that boat, which is pretty fun. And she's got her trick umbrella, and they fight. She does manage to blow up police headquarters, but everyone gets out, and then she is captured. And Batman realizes that he might have made a mistake because without her in the way, now Rupert Thorne owns all of the crime in Gotham. And it ends on a really cool note where he's like, I failed tonight, Pennyworth, and I can't let that happen again. Even though he didn't fail, he got the bad guy, but by getting the bad guy, there were consequences he did not expect, which I thought was a really cool and unexpected little twist at the end there.
Mm-hmm.
So that is In Treacherous Waters. Minnie Driver is the Penguin.
So great.
Dietrich,
I love Minnie Driver.
yeah, she's amazing. Diedrich Bader is Harvey Dent. John DiMaggio is Bullock.
You can kind of hear a little bit of Bender in his voice here and there too. So.
And Paul Scheer, I don't know if you know Paul Scheer, but from How Did This Get Made? He does both of the Penguin sons. So
I think I know who he is. I'm pretty sure I do.
So, In Treacherous Waters, overall thoughts, Jamie?
Penguin was kind of throwing down just a little tiny bit of mom vibe from Futurama.
Yeah, I guess so, right?
Just because, the sons are kind of lackeys and she's not afraid to slap them around, but she slaps a little harder than mom does. But, I thought the episode was really good. I wasn't like opposed to the female penguin concept. I just didn't know why the choice was made. I thought, let me watch the show, see what they're going to present to me. And I was not disappointed. I very much like the characterization. It's certainly different than anything we've gotten before, but still pretty true to who Penguin is overall, other than, the gender swap.
Yeah.
I thought the Iceberg Lounge was super cool. The umbrella being on top. I saw that and I just kind of snickered a little bit. I'm like, oh, that's goofy, but it works. And then, finding out later there was a reason for that being there because it was covering that cannon. I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. I like it. So, there's a lot of layered thought going into these episodes. And, right off the bat, they're showing you, this isn't just going to be all surface level stuff. This is going to be, we thought ahead about why things are the way they are here. And
yeah,
again,
absolutely.
I appreciate that. And I appreciate great character work. And, so far so good with this episode. I really enjoyed all the characters as they were portrayed. Even if they are a bit different than what I'm used to, that's not necessarily a bad thing because I can go with a different translation because even if it's one I don't like, I have dozens of other ones I can go back to that I do. But I'm not disappointed in any of them so far.
Yeah, I agree. I did think the choice to make Penguin female was weird, but also once you see the episode, I'm like, I like her. She's still the Penguin, but she is scary. She is an a-hole. Like she kills one of her own sons. And she's not afraid to throw down with Batman. And I don't mind the little twist on her because she's still who the Penguin should be. Getting into a freaking crime war over Gotham, all that stuff is just so them. like we said, they fit a lot into this, setting up Dent and Barbara and Jim Gordon and Bullock and Flass. Bullock and Flass are, in all the episodes I've seen, as the two corrupt cops on the team. And I
Easily
know
the
that,
biggest douchebags in all of Gotham City,
right? And I know that
but
Bullock,
doing
like,
it so well.
yeah, Bullock goes back and forth depending on the version, but I don't mind him being dirty in this one. And then working with the Penguin and stuff. So, like, there's a lot in here. And there's even a moment where the Penguin's son is on the run with Barbara, and some of the Penguin's like lackeys are after them. First of all, I love that they wear like their own little Penguin lackey outfits. And Batman steps in with the Batmobile at that point. So not only do they introduce Batman himself, but they also have the Batmobile, and then we find out he has a submarine.
Yeah, they wasted no time getting the vehicles up in line with this.
Yeah. And I love the shot of him in the submarine going after the Iceberg Lounge, and you see all the other chests of people who have pissed off the Penguin.
Yes. Oh, thank you for pointing that out. I forgot about that. That was so good because you're like, oh, he's not the first one that has fallen victim to this particular fate.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I love that. And it's so dark because it seems like the Iceberg Lounge is always kind of chilling out in that part of the harbor. And it shows why her son was so damn scared, because he has seen her do this to how many other people over the years.
Yeah.
So he knows that test is coming.
Yeah. A little bit of a Dexter vibe coming out of that, if you've ever watched that show.
I did not, but yeah.
It's wonderful, but anybody that's seen the show knows what I'm saying there.
Yeah. So
Dexter would basically take his victims out. He'd chop them up into pieces, put them in trash bags, take them out into, the Gulf someplace, and just, well, I guess it'd be the Atlantic, because Miami touches the Atlantic, not the Gulf, I think. Anyway, he would just dump these things off in like certain spots. So that's kind of the vibe I got from there. I'm not saying they stole the idea, it just felt similar.
Okay. But yeah, I mean, and there's some other like nice smaller moments with Gordon and Barbara I really enjoyed. I liked the moment when Barbara says something about like, oh, half these people want to see you fail, or half these people would love to get you. And Jim Gordon is like, oh, it's not that bad. It's got to be more than half. And then later on, when they get out of the police department before it blows up, she says, oh, we were lucky. And he goes, we also moved fast, so we made some of that luck ourselves. And I just appreciated that too. Like, there were just these nice character moments for more than just Batman or the Penguin. They did some nice work setting up everyone in this. And again, that is really impressive in a short amount of time.
Yes. I would like to see more of Jim as we go along too. I think I can't remember who the voice actor is for Jim, but I think they're doing a wonderful job. And I really like the characterization of he and Barbara both. And I like their dynamic off of each other, because there's a bit of a contentious relationship there, but still very, very much a love relationship between a father and a daughter.
Yeah. Yeah. The voice actor for Commissioner Gordon is Eric Morgan Stewart. I don't know his name, and he doesn't have a picture on IMDb, so not sure. But you're right, he does a great job. I really like him.
And again, I think all the voices are great, and so many of these, especially like the guest voices for the villains, they seem to be dealing more or less with different villains each episode. They just seem to be having the time of their lives. Like Minnie Driver, you can just tell in this voice performance. It's a great performance, but you can just tell she's having a hoot with this.
Yeah, absolutely. She's really good. And honestly, I would have never guessed that was her.
Me either. I completely forgot that we talked about that on the previous episode. So, at the end of the episode, they run the credits so fast, I have to hit the pause button and back up so I could see who it was. And I saw Minnie Driver. I was like, oh, yeah, that was her. Oh, wow. I never would have picked up on that.
Yeah. Yeah, she's having a great time, and I love it. And everyone really has. And so it's really good. All right. We've got our new Penguin in treacherous waters. They wasted no time. Let's move forward. The next one is And Be a Villain. So, And Be a Villain is our introduction to this new version of Clayface. It's a very Montoya-centered episode, which I really dug. I thought she was great too.
Same. And I've never had anything against Renee Montoya as a character, but I've never been particularly interested in her. But I think they're doing a magnificent job with her character throughout the show, not just in this particular episode, but obviously they're establishing her in this episode. And that carries through later on, minor spoilers for you. But if you liked her in this, you're going to like her as things go on. They're doing a great job with her.
Yeah, I agree. And again, I feel like there is a concerted effort to really have a nice balance of male and female characters. And so, make the Penguin a woman, give Renee Montoya the spotlight, let her be essentially the main character for at least this episode. I appreciate that. I like the idea of, really leveling it out and have a little bit of everything. And she is great in this. It is again, it's a little different. Usually the way I think of Montoya, I think of her as more of a beat cop, but that's probably because of the animated series. So I like here, it seems like she's a new detective and she gets this case of a missing person, actress Yvonne Francis. And so she's off to Hollywood to figure out who might have abducted this woman and why. And so, first of all, Yvonne went on a date with Bruce Wayne. And so Bruce comes in and he basically says, hey, do I need to make a donation here to keep this quiet? And she's like, I just need to find out about Yvonne. You're not under arrest. You're not a suspect. And he's like, yeah, but I want to keep my name out of it. So what if I write you a check? And she goes, I'm not for sale. And I loved later on when he's with Alfred and he goes, she turned down a bribe. She might be useful to us.
Mm-hmm. That
like
was
that,
brilliant.
What a great character beat. Just love it.
And so much of this episode is focused on him focusing on her.
Yeah.
Which I loved.
For sure. It's almost like the Detective Yin situation from the Batman animated series, but this is with Montoya where, it seems like they're already starting to develop this level of trust and everything. But I love that he used his Bruce Wayne persona to offer a bribe to test her to see if she could be trusted.
Yeah. I that was a stroke of brilliance in my opinion.
Yeah. And that's so Batman. It's so great. So anyway, she goes off to the movie studio. She interviews Basil Carlo. Anyone who's a Batman fan hears that name and knows maybe it's best not to trust him. But Basil Carlo is like, oh yeah, we've worked together before. We were friends, but I haven't seen her in months. So, keep me posted, but I gotta go. But they do a little switcheroo on us because not long after we find out that Basil was lying, big shock, and then they find him dead. And so for a second, I was like, oh, are they messing with us? Did they put out a little red herring with Basil Carlo and it's not going to be him? Spoilers, it's him. But they did make me question it for a moment and I give them credit for that.
Anytime they can keep people guessing, especially, devout fans that have followed this lore for so many years, that's pretty good writing in my opinion.
Yeah.
Especially
absolutely.
if you're not doing it just for the sake of doing it. It's just, just little clever things like that of like, well, maybe this is and maybe this isn't. You're going to find out in about 15 minutes.
Well, exactly. And we already know they're doing their own thing. So it's like, oh, are they just teasing with us? Do they make us think it was going to be Basil? It's not going to be, but I like what they did here. I thought it was really creative. But Montoya starts talking to other people at the studio. We find out that there is this cloaked figure who is killing people around the studio. He ends up killing, I think it was one of the studio executives. And, he's got the hat. He has the red scarf, the big overcoat. He looks cool and scary as hell.
He looks like the Shadow.
He looks like the Shadow crossed with the Phantom of the Opera.
Yes.
And so I watched the first 3 episodes. And I have a group chat with Eric, Brendan, and Joe that you used to be a part of, but you hate us, so you don't want to talk to us anymore.
It's not that I hate you. It's that you guys blow my phone up at all hours of the day when I'm working, sleeping, and all that other stuff.
Anyway, I was like, guys, I watched the first 3, but the Clayface one was my favorite. And then they watched it and they were like, of course it's your favorite, Andy. It's like a Universal Monster movie. And I was like, I know, of course. I know my favorite flavor. This is it. I love it. So I love that.
Go ahead.
I love that you got this creepy Clayface murderer killing people on a movie lot with really strong nods and inspiration from the Universal Classic Monsters. It's the best.
Of course, yeah. Very Phantom of the Opera, which I
Oh,
appreciate. Now, what I want to ask you, and I'm not like the ultimate Clayface aficionado or anything, but I feel like the premise of this type of a Clayface is familiar. Like he hasn't always been like the big goopy monster shapeshifter thing. He is there not a precedent that at one point this was Clayface where he would just kind of be like a master of disguise sort of thing?
so I'm also not a Clayface super expert, but the very original version of Clayface looked like this. But my understanding is he had no powers whatsoever. He just would kill people, but he would wear like masks.
Okay.
And then over the years, I mean, there have been many, many versions of Clayface over the years, but over the years, then he became what we now all picture, which is the giant living pile of mud that can transform into anything and everything.
Yes.
And what I like here is it seems like they found a nice, there's that word again, balance between the two. Is
Yes.
he very much looks like the classic Generation 1 Clayface in the cloak and the hat and the hidden face, the scarf, but he still has some supernatural abilities to reshape his own face. Not his whole body, not to transform into giant spikes and things like that, but he can at least reshape his own face to look like other people. And I thought that was just a really nice happy medium between them.
Agreed. And the strong tragic backstory that comes with those abilities, I feel like was a very nice touch with it as well. Again, I
Agreed.
don't know if there's a canonic precedent with that, but as presented in this episode, I thought it was really good, really strong, and almost I won't quite say sympathetic villain, but like you kind of get it.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I love his backstory here, and this is one that I got, and this is the biggest compliment I can pay. I got very big Heart of Ice vibes
Yeah, yeah.
of like kind of redefining this classic character with a new tragic backstory. It worked for me. So anyway, we find out that yeah, through all these different interviews, Basil Carlo is like this amazingly talented actor, but because he looks the way he looks, he was never going to be a leading man. He was always going to play the villain.
They
And
basically said he's Uggo.
yeah, yeah. I mean, and he looks just like Boris Karloff. like there's no mistaking that his design in this was based off Boris Karloff.
I mean, Basil Karloff, Boris
Yeah,
Karloff, the look. I mean, they're not being subtle about it. You're right.
sure. And I love that his makeup artist in this it was Jack Ellman, but he is a dead ringer for Jack Pierce, who did the makeup for all the classic Universal monsters.
Oh, that's a nod I did not catch.
Google Jack Pierce, Universal Studios, and you'll go, "Oh, he looks exactly like the guy from this show."
All
Like
right.
they didn't even try to hide it. He looks exactly like Jack Pierce.
Well, this is quite the love letter, then, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And again, that's why I was like, "Oh, this is the best thing ever." I love this. Um, and so we find out that Basil was carrying a torch for Yvonne, the missing actress, and she even had been super supportive and a good friend to him and saying how talented he was. And so, aside from him just wanting to have this career as a leading man, he also was in love with her and figured if he could fix his face, he could have both. He could have the career, but he could also have the girl. And so he makes this deal with the makeup artist, Jack, and gives him all this money and this experimental treatment. And that's what causes the clay face, where it seems to work temporarily, where he can be the more handsome version of himself. Yvonne, though, still rejects him, isn't interested in that. And so he gets really upset. And now he can no longer keep the face looking the way he wants to for long periods of time. And so now he is out for his revenge and he's killing people and looking really cool and creepy while he does it. So, Batman is watching Montoya as she is investigating all this and uncovering all these things. And then they find some dead bodies, which again, something you would never see on Batman the Animated Series, and realizing that at least one of those is someone Montoya had just talked to. So now we find out Basil is also impersonating other people to throw the cops off the scent. So it all culminates where Yvonne is held hostage on this big set for very Pit in the Pendulum vibes, um, where Basil wants to have this last this last scene with her. But Batman and Montoya show up. They manage to stop Basil and save Yvonne. And then I think Basil escapes, doesn't he? I think Clayface escapes. I don't think they get him.
I honestly don't remember how that panned out at the end.
But anyway, Batman disappears. I think Clayface disappears. Yvonne is saved, and that is when Montoya finds the little bug on her coat, and she says something about to Batman of like, "I know you're still listening. This isn't over." So that begins, which I love.
Yeah, she's no stooge. She's nobody's fool. I mean, for all intents and purposes, she's just as sharp as Batman is. And I appreciate that, because although we know Batman may be like the ultimate detective and, a great theoretical and strategic mind, somebody out there is as smart as he is. And I like the fact that they've kind of picked her to be the equal footing in that department.
Yeah, for sure.
And one more thing I want to address here is, I don't know if this is a bizarre thing to say or not, but I appreciate the fact that this show is going out of its way to showcase that human beings have very different body types.
Mm-hmm.
They're not all built like supermodels and bodybuilders and everything. And they're not cartoonishly, so fat they have to, butter themselves to walk through a doorway kind of thing. So this one just is finding a really nice balance with their characters, and this is not meant in any kind of a disrespectful fashion, but Renee Montoya is a little thick through the thighs.
Yeah.
As is Harleen Quinzel that we'll be introduced to in the next episode. So I'm appreciating the fact that these are normal, everyday people that you would see walking out on the street. They're not overly comic bookish in the sense that everybody is the ultimate pinnacle of fitness in the human physicality. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I that's just a little thing that I just wanted to acknowledge, because I appreciate it. Being somebody who is of a very wide body type myself, I appreciate representation, I guess is the best way I could say it. So.
No, I agree. I appreciated that Montoya was not, rail thin. She also wasn't huge, but she just had a much more normal body type. And I thought that was a nice touch. So Renee Montoya is voiced by Michelle Bonilla. Dan Donahue does Basil Carlo. He does a great, I don't know him based on his photo on IMDb, but he does a great version with the voice. And we also met Lucius Fox in this, which I forgot to mention. So,
interesting choice on changing Lucius from any version that I've known before.
Yeah. But it was cool that he pops up. And I also love when he says, Mr. Wayne has nothing left to say. If you have any questions, you go through me. And again, Montoya's like, he's not under arrest. He goes, yeah, but you didn't talk to him at home, did you? You brought him here. So I like that he showed up. But I gotta give a special shout out to Yvonne Francis. She's voiced by Lacey Chabert, who I do like a lot. This could have been the most throwaway part in the episode. There's so much else going on in this episode. You got Batman, you've got Clayface, you've got Montoya, you got plenty to do. And Yvonne Francis gets kidnapped and saved. It could have been just a very by the numbers damsel in distress. She's a pretty actress who got kidnapped. And yet they give her a lot of character and a lot of strength. And they made her up. And at the end of this episode, I was like, I hope that's not the last we see of Yvonne Francis, because she was awesome. Like, she had so much personality. And like when she's there and she's on the, on the bed and the pendulum is swinging and Basil is bemoaning his horrible past and his horrible luck. And she goes, Basil, I didn't believe that for a second. You're relying on makeup for a performance and it just doesn't read as real. And she starts like reading him for filth while he's got her on the bed. And I'm like, yes, all right, go for it. And then when Montoya is trying to get her loose, she says something about like, listen, I don't want to be a prima donna actress, but sooner would be better. She was great. And I loved her.
She was so fetch.
She was, you know what? Stop trying to make fetch happen, Jamie. It's not going to happen. No, and I wonder if it's Yvonne Craig that they named her after.
Very
Just
well could be.
just curious. But anyway, my point is, it should not have been a memorable part, and somehow it was, and I really liked her.
My only minor gripe here, and this is just one of those silly little things. Once one of her arms was untied, she could have just rolled off the side of that table, and then they could have taken a little more time getting the other one off instead of having to have both undone to get out from underneath that blade. But that's so nitpicky. I shouldn't even said it. That's as I was watching it, I was just kind of like, okay. But I was invested enough. I kind of let that little tiny thing slide. It's not big enough deal to derail what I feel was a very high quality episode. And for me, this was my favorite episode. 2 in. I mean, it's kind of hard to say, oh, this one was so much better than the other one that I watched.
Well, that's just it. I mean, I watched the first 3. I think they're all great. This is my personal favorite because, again, this is playing in my neighborhood. I love all this stuff. Like, there's an action scene where Batman sword fights Clayface on a big, cool, old Hollywood set, and it's awesome.
There are a lot of things in this episode I was thinking of you as I was watching it because I'd be like, Andy has to love this.
It is. It's like it's right up my alley. It was terrific. Loved it. No notes. Bring Yvonne Francis back. So yeah, this one's really awesome. And it seems like maybe it's the beginning of a beautiful friendship between Batman and Montoya. We shall see. So that is "and be a villain." Oh, and he also has a great quote in there where he says something about, it's when he's doing his big villain speech, and he says, yeah, it turns out that villain was the role I was born to play. It's pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
All right. And then on to episode number 3, Kiss of the Catwoman.
Wonder who this is going to be about.
I can't imagine. But even though it's a Catwoman episode and we're meeting Catwoman, as you just mentioned, they also have time to set up Harleen Quinzel. So this one opens at a museum showing of famous jewels, and on display is the Wayne family jewels, including Martha Wayne's pearls. And so Bruce meets Selena Kyle, and they have a little cute, little flirty back and forth. And she says something about like, we have a lot in common, tragic orphans. And he goes, your dad is in jail for tax evasion. And she's like, well, it's not exactly it, but we've got to have more to talk about than the other floozies you take out. And she also has a great line of like, I think I'm the only single woman in Gotham you haven't taken out, so I'm starting to take it personally.
Yep.
So they have a great little introduction to each other, and then some dude starts like talking shit about Martha Wayne without realizing who's behind him. And he's like, yeah, come on, lady. What are you thinking wearing this into Crime Alley? You're asking for it. And I just love that, no hesitation, Bruce just clocks him.
So I had such a chuckle in this moment because that dude started saying, what do these things cost? 20 grand, 30 grand? Wearing those in Crime Alley, you kind of got what was coming to you. And I was like, man, I would punch that dude right in the mouth. And like a split second later, Bruce punches him in the mouth. I'm like, there we go. That'll work.
Hell yeah.
I felt that moment. I felt it.
You can blame him. Yeah, it was awesome. But in order to stay out of jail, he now has to have these weekly sessions with Dr. Harleen Quinzel. This whole episode, aside from it being the introduction of Catwoman, we also get a really strong subplot of flashing back to Bruce when he lost his parents.
Mm-hmm.
And how many times have we seen the death of the Waynes? Countless times. So many times. And yet, here we are, a new Batman animated series, and we have multiple flashbacks to when the Waynes were killed, done in a very new and very fresh and very sensitive way. And I was really impressed with that. Of like, oh, we're doing it. We know these beats more or less, but they're doing it in a unique way of really focusing on Bruce moments after, on the car ride home with Alfred, him laying in bed that night. Like, I found that really powerful and, again, really well done.
They focused a lot on the psychological trauma of it, which so much of this episode for me was brilliant because of the setup, because of Harleen and Bruce and the flashbacks and Alfred's involvement and all of that. And this is a Catwoman episode, guys.
Yeah,
So when we talk
exactly.
about how do they cram this much quality storytelling information in a 23, 24-minute runtime and bang it out of the park in every single angle, this is the episode that you want to watch to understand what we're talking about when we say that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah,
This
absolutely
could have
agree.
been a 90-minute movie and not packed more in than what it did in the 23, 24-minute runtime.
Yep. Agreed. So you've got Bruce and Dr. Quinzel, and I love that he's not giving her an inch. She's trying to dig in deeper, and he absolutely refuses. And yet he's still kind of going through all these things of his trauma independent of that, which I think is really great. And at the
Mm-hmm.
same time, yes, we start to see Selena Kyle take on the persona of Catwoman. We find out that she's a wealthy heiress, but she's out of money because her father's in jail, left her with nothing but debt. She still has a maid around the house who's pretty funny and reminds me of some other character, but I can't put my finger on it. There was something very familiar about that dynamic of like the maid who is like very gruff and to the point, but
She
I,
almost reminds me of, and it's the name slips my mind, but Cloris Leachman's character in Young Frankenstein.
oh yeah, I can see that.
Just a little bit, not
Yeah.
like carbon copy, but that's kind of where my brain went as she was on screen for a minute.
Yeah. Um, but she's very funny. It's like kind of playing the straight woman to
Yeah,
Selena.
yeah. Mhm.
Um, and there's also a great nod, just so I don't forget, where Selena's looking at the newspaper and they're talking about Batman, and the sketch of Batman is like the image from his first appearance back in 1939. It's like him, kind of standing there with the cape out behind him. It's very evocative of that first image of Batman from that very first comic. Not the
Well, I
cover,
mean,
the story.
the whole look of Batman is very evocative of that
Oh,
era,
yeah. But I'm talking
which
the
I
pose.
love, by the way. I love it.
Yeah, same. But the pose is right from that.
Okay.
But anyway, she sees it in the paper and she gets an idea, and she decides she's going to go start making money on her own by robbing people as Catwoman. Well, first of all, Christina Ricci is doing Selena. I think she's fantastic. I love it.
Talk about somebody having the time of their freaking lives. What do they
Yep.
spend 2-3 days in a sound booth doing these recordings for these episodes?
Hmm.
I have to imagine that she was just giddy as a schoolgirl in between every take because her performance just shines in
Yeah.
this role. And
Yeah.
you know me, I'm not the world's biggest Catwoman fan by any stretch of the imagination, but I freaking loved Selena and Catwoman in this so much because she brought it to life in a way that I thought brought a freshness to the character that I don't feel like I've seen in a while.
I
So I
agree. I
really
agree.
appreciated
Yeah.
it.
Like she didn't go with, I guess, what we would all expect, which is the little more sultry femme fatale. She's not doing that. She's a little more playful,
Yeah.
a little lighter. And I liked that about it.
She was
Um,
very, very reminiscent, both costume appearance and personality wise of, the early Catwoman appearances from, the early 40s.
yeah.
And I thought it was pretty brilliant.
I absolutely love the look. I love that super old school Catwoman look, the purple and the green. I think it's awesome. I think she looks amazing.
Same.
I love that they did it. I love that she goes out on this crime spree and gets caught almost immediately. I think that
Multiple
that is,
times, no less. But
yeah, I think that is hilarious. But like they do a great job of setting up the classic Batman Catwoman dynamic where she even says, she goes, "Oh, well, what can I say? You inspire me." Like she likes him, she's into him, but if he's going to try to bring her in, she's going to turn on him. The playfulness between them, I think, really works. I love it. Because you
the only
realize,
thing missing was the quieter Papa Spank line. And, given that this is a Bruce Tim Helm show, I'm surprised it didn't happen.
well, there's still time. Maybe the next half of season 1 or season 2 or whatever. But yeah, she gets brought in almost immediately and gets let off. And I love the moment where Bruce is like, they're letting her go. And immediately she walks out of the courtroom and it's like, okay, you get your second chance, make better decisions. And she's like, I will. And she gets in the car and she's like, let's go get some work done on the car. And so she jumped right back into it. And then, like you said, I just love that she goes and she creates the Catmobile.
I would buy a scale model of that. I would. It
Yeah,
was so cool looking.
it was. It was great.
It was almost like a 30s noir version of like the Thundercat mobile or whatever the hell it was called.
Oh, totally. Yeah, yeah, yeah. The Thunder Tank.
Thundertech. There we go.
Thunder Tank. Uh, so yeah, she's back on her spree yet again. Harvey Dent was back in this one. He's the one who lets her go. And Barbara's like, whoa, whoa, whoa. Like, you're really just going to let her go? And what is she, a donor? And he's like, well, I would, but she's flat broke. So Batman is after her again. He realizes he needs to set a trap. What do you do when you want to trap Catwoman? You put out the jewels. And so he makes sure everyone knows that the jewels are getting pulled at the end of the weekend, which means he knows that she's going to go after them. She also gets into it with Flass and Bullock. And they're so mad when she gets let go, and then they get ridiculed at the police station that now they have a vendetta against her, where they show up and like they heavily imply that they are going to kill her.
Yeah, these two are pretty seedy.
Because Bullock pulls out the cuffs and Flass goes, "You're not going to need those." I was like, damn. And so you get the moment where it's like Batman and Catwoman have to team up against Flass and Bullock, but then they're at odds again as soon as that threat has passed.
Flass and Bullock are just, I mean, they almost make you feel dirty, but at the same time, they're entertaining to watch. Like there's a little bit of levity brought into it with them, but like they're so far gone on the corruptness of this police department. And I can't really talk too much about it, but you'll see in not too many more episodes what I'm talking about.
Okay. Keep an eye out for it. But anyway, Batman, she thinks that Batman's going to let her go. He cuffs her. He disappears. And then she's back in jail. She tries to get her maid to bail her out, but turns out that she owed her 3 years of pay. And so the maid sold everything and is taking her payment and leaving Selena in jail. And then there are moments in here, again, speaking of the subplot with the therapy and with Bruce's trauma, where Pennyworth actually is like, like, this isn't a bad idea for you to go see Dr. Quinzel. Maybe it's a good idea. And Bruce still brushes it off. And then that very last shot, it's like one last flashback where it shows Alfred at the car hearing the gunshots.
Mm-hmm.
Which, again, we've never seen it from his perspective either, which I thought was really powerful.
Yeah, because there are not too many versions that I can recall, if any, where Alfred was actually present in some way when it happened instead of being called after the fact to come and pick Bruce up at the police station.
Yeah.
But it only makes sense that Alfred would be the one that had driven them to the movies or the play or whatever, version that they went out that evening for.
Mm-hmm.
So I like that angle of it because it's just not something that I can recall having seen before.
Right. Well, and there's also and I'm sorry to go back to the flashbacks. There's a really nice moment where the cops are trying to get a description of the shooter from Bruce. And he's like, I didn't see anything. It was too dark. I couldn't see his face. And then Alfred is like, I've got to take him home. This has been a lot. And then we find out when Bruce is laying in bed, he sees Joe Chill's face and he was lying to the cops because he was afraid, which is also just heartbreaking. And so he's laying there and he's seeing it and he's seeing the man who killed his parents. And then he ends up in, Alfred's doorway saying, I'm going to make them all pay or whatever it is. And
yeah, I don't know that it was necessarily so much that he was scared to say something as he wanted to just go handle it himself. Even at that young age, he became an agent of vengeance and justice, if you will. So that's kind of how I took it. And I'm not saying fear wasn't involved. Don't get me wrong, but I feel like that was more, I don't want you guys to get him because I'm going to handle it.
Well, I think that switch happens when he's laying in bed.
Okay.
That was the way I took it is he didn't say anything because he was scared. And then he's laying in bed and he's seeing it replay and he realizes, oh, it's up to me. And that's when he makes that decision.
Okay. Yeah. I can go with that.
But again, those flashbacks I found really, really effective.
Agreed. And, to address the Dr. Quinzel thing, she's super invested in keeping Bruce on the couch and keeping talking to him. Like she's like, as a good therapist would be, if she sees somebody's got something that they need to crack a shell on when it comes to therapy and dealing with, past traumas and emotions, that's what a good therapist would do, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
But by God, Andy, do they pay that off in spades in the next episode or two?
Oh, all right. I am interested to see how that is going to play for me. Because, I've heard a little bit, and I don't know. We'll see. We'll see how it goes.
I really liked it.
Okay.
Very different, but I really liked it.
All right. I did love that he stole his file from her office, and she knew he was going to. And so
that was so good.
She just left the note inside, which was great.
Yep. And again, she's no fool in any way.
Yeah.
And, obviously we know at some point she's going to have some different personality, ulterior motives, whatever you want to call it. But she's not played as dumb at any point.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think I really enjoyed that. Like sometimes I have just a little bit of issue with how quick Harleen falls for Joker and, goes down that whole path. And, I think there's been better versions than others in that case. And sometimes, I think it just goes a little too quick, a little too far, what have you. But this one, I mean, there's been no Joker in the 9 episodes I've watched. There's not even been a reference to the Joker that I've caught. So she's pretty much independent of all of that.
Mm-hmm.
And I got to be honest with you, and this is probably going to make Harley Quinn purists get their rotten fruit torches and pitchforks. I think it makes her a better character. And I'm not saying I don't like Harley Quinn as a character, but I might like this version. Let me give it some time to really soak in and see her a few times. But I'm really appreciating this version of Harley Quinn. Let's put it that way.
All right. That's good to hear. I'll look forward to it. But I did think it was interesting that, like you said, they're leaving the Joker off to the side for now.
Which is okay because
yeah.
Joker's iconic. Obviously, Joker's iconic.
They'll get to it, I'm sure. But
yeah. Sometimes I think they try to get there too quick, maybe.
Yeah.
I don't know. And this show is going to take its time. I have no doubt Joker at some point is going to show up. He might be in episode 10. I have no idea. I haven't watched it.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like they're just going to get there when they get there, and they're not in a hurry to do it. And I'm fine with that.
Well, and right now it feels like a very good combination of some of the biggies like the Penguin and Catwoman, and even Harley for that matter.
Yep.
And then also doing some more obscure ones like Clayface and Onomatopoeia. I know he shows up eventually.
Yep. Firebug's in it. So, I mean, there's all kinds of villains that you may not think about on a day-by-day basis, like you would a Joker, Catwoman, Riddler, Penguin. But
give me some Magpie.
Yeah, why not? Let's bring Anarchy back while we're at it, too.
All right. Well, anyway, so that is Kiss of the Catwoman, episode number 3. And like I said, I really enjoyed all 3. I think that the And Be a Villain is my sentimental favorite, but 1, 2, and 3, I was like, all right, guys, you did it. You got me. Heck of a way to kick off the show, and I'm into it.
So I did a lot of leapfrogging on what was my favorite episode and what I watched so far, but then I'm almost certain it was the 9th episode. I was like, okay, everybody else, you had a good run because this is the one now. I love that episode so much, Andy. I was laying in bed at like 10:45 at night. You know I don't stay up that late very often anyway. I almost restarted the episode as soon as it ended.
Wow.
That's how much I like that one.
Okay. All right. Something to look forward to. All right. Well, why don't you give some closing thoughts for now? I mean, you already kind of did, but Batman Cape Crusader, it's upon us. It's about a week old, and we're liking it.
I feel like the whole world is all the way through it except for you and I, and we're just hanging on to the threads of being able to stretch it out as long as we can at this point. But I've made my thoughts very clearly known. I think this is a very high quality, very strong, very character driven show. And I don't feel like there's anything but that one complaint I have about the Bruce Alfred relationship, which is a big one, mind you, for me. But other than that, I feel like this thing is just firing on all 8 cylinders. And I really am excited to see where it goes from here.
Yeah. I mean, and that's an excellent point too, is with a lot of these animated shows, especially the first couple episodes can be a little rough because they're finding their footing and they're figuring it out. But this truly feels from episode 1 fully formed in the best possible way.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm with you. I think it's great. I've really been enjoying it. I am looking forward to getting through the rest of them, but it's different. It's unique, but it is still unmistakably Batman and his world. It's just a specific take on that world, but a take that I can get into and really, enjoy. So yeah, what a nice surprise that this has been. And I'm really glad that it's out there. I'm glad it's as good as it is. And I have mostly just seen very positive things from other fans. Not that I've looked too much, but I've seen enough where it seems like other people are enjoying it too. And like you said, on Prime, it says #1 in the United States. So I guess other people are watching it too.
And it has every day since its release. So, I mean, people are watching this show. I'm telling everybody at work when we talk about geeky stuff, I'm like, if you got Amazon Prime, you need to be watching Cape Crusader because it's some of the best Batman content I've seen in a while. And I really am loving it. So, I'm not going to claim I'm the biggest Bat fan in the world, obviously, but you guys know I do this show pretty regularly and have for 10 years. I really have an appreciation and love for Batman. So obviously my opinions are not always everybody else's opinions. That's okay. Menus at restaurants, as Andy would say, but give it a chance. If you were like me and you were just kind of about it coming in, give it a chance. Watch the first 2 or 3 episodes. If it's not for you by then, it's probably not going to be there for you, going forward for the next 6 or 7. But I feel like more people than not are going to appreciate what they're doing with this show.
Yeah. I mean, last night I was rewatching them before bed, and Catherine was not really watching. She was doing some crafts and stuff on the table. Because we're starting pre-production for Halloween. And so she was doing a little bit of crafty stuff while I was watching Batman. And then today she goes, that new show, it seems really good. I'm like, yeah, it is really good. She goes, yeah, I even found myself starting to get sucked in. So take that as you will. She wasn't really even watching it, but she saw enough to go, oh, I think this is good. And she's right. It is.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think we're, as of recording, just a touch over 3 weeks away from the kickoff of the official Scarathon, if you will, in the Real Fans groups, August 31st. I have so much stuff I need to watch. I need to watch the rest of The Boys. I need to watch the rest of The Bear, Shogun. There's so much stuff I have to watch. And then Scarathon will kick in, and that'll pretty much dominate my time along with football from August 31st to October 31st. So I say this only because I would really love to just go back and watch this entire season over again because I'm liking it that much, but I'm probably just not going to have the time to do it.
Mm-hmm.
But I like it that much. I would be more than happy to, schedule allowing.
Yeah. Wow.
I feel like that's the biggest compliment I can pay it right there.
Yeah, for sure. Awesome. Well, Batman Cape Crusader, it's on Prime Video. Hope you guys are digging it. It's really good, at least as far as we're concerned. So yeah, go check it out. And again, we'll get around to talking about it more as time progresses. I know Brendan really wanted to talk about it too, but he was busy this week. And so guess what? Maybe we'll do a couple more episodes soon and he'll get his chance. But Batman Cape Crusader now available. And it's, as you said, I think some of the best Batman content we've got in quite a while. And that's saying a lot.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, now let's check in with you, fine feathered finks. It's time to crack open the Wayne Manor mailbox. It's time again for the Wayne Manor mailbox.
You've got mail.
Darren. What is a letter for me?
Maybe temporary.
She wrote a letter.
You're one hell of a messenger. This is all Master Wayne.
All right, Jamie. Now, the first one I got here, it's an audio message, and I've got to apologize to the gentleman who sent it. Jonathan Tyler Patrick sent this a little while ago, but because it's an audio message, it's like I just haven't pulled it up so we could listen to it on a show. So, Jonathan, I'm sorry for the delay, but I thought we're better late than never. We're going to listen to it now. So, Jamie, please join me and we'll listen to this little message that Jonathan sent us.
Sure.
Hey guys, from Holy BatCast, Brendan, Jamie, Andy, it's Tyler from Krypton Report. I was just listening to your episode on Memories of Batman 89 as I was driving for work, and I just thought I'd make a voice recording and send in. But I just wanted to say, my, I guess, most recent and best memory from Batman 89 was about 2 years ago for Batman Day when they released 89 Returns and Mask of the Phantasm back in theaters, and I bought tickets for my best friend and I to see all three, and I bought tickets for me and the kids to see Mask of the Phantasm, but my son at the time, who was 7, wanted to watch all of them. So sitting in the theater and watching Batman 89 on the big screen, my first big screen experience with it, but with my 7-year-old son and him enjoying, because he had watched it before, like at home, but never like really sat and paid all the attention. So sitting there with him and letting him experience the theme music, the sound, like, and the imagery and everything on the big screen was just a really great experience as a parent to share with my kid. And, much like Brendan, I have more memories, of course, of Batman Forever because I was 10, and I have some of Batman Returns and that experience. But 89, my history with it is I knew of it. I don't remember all the first time I saw it, but I had some toys and stuff like that. But it's a good episode. I love Jamie's story about his parents. Those were awesome parents. You guys take care.
All right. Thanks, Tyler. Sorry, I didn't realize you went by Tyler. My bad. Thanks so much for sharing that. And how cool that you got to share Batman up on the big screen with your son. I can't wait till Harley's old enough to do that with her. And then by extension, my own son is just going to be a few years behind. But how cool. I love that. Thank you so much for sharing.
Those are moments, if I may, as a geek parent,
you may,
that I have experienced with all three of my children to a pretty high degree. And these are memories I'm going to carry with me until I shuffle off this mortal coil. And in chronological order, my son was 4 years old when the Avengers was released. I saw the Avengers in the theater 9 times. I still love it. I still think it's one of the all-time Hall of Fame great superhero films. Absolutely adore that film.
I'm with you.
And my son saw that movie with me at least 7, if not 8 of the times that I went. And every single time Hulk was on that screen, that boy lit up like Christmas and would yell and cheer and throw his arms in the air and laugh and giggle when Hulk would wreck that plane jumping off the helicarrier. Those moments are absolutely cherished in my mind, and I'm going to carry with them. 2016, Suicide Squad was released. Of course, my oldest daughter, Quinlan, very much into Harley Quinn for a number of years. Not so much anymore, but, she'll circle back. We all do. Watching that Suicide Squad movie with her and watching her face light up as she saw Harley Quinn come to life on a movie screen, that's cherished moments for me. Going to carry that with me forever. And then the following year in 2017, when Wonder Woman was released, my younger daughter, Kalina, was, of course, beyond obsessed with Wonder Woman and the look of delight on her face throughout that entire experience. And we saw that in the theater together, I believe 7 times, at least 6, if not 7 times. And every time, just absolute joy and delight on her face, seeing her hero brought to life. So these moments with your children, being able to share them with them, whether it's your first time or their first time, those moments are going to be carried with you in your heart forever. They're great. They're irreplaceable. And, for me, big time geek parent, those memories of sharing those things with my kids, I'm going to carry with me for all my life.
Oh, I love that. That's so awesome. So, well, thank you for sharing. Thank you to Tyler. Thank you, Jamie. I mean, we haven't quite gotten there yet, but just the other night, I've bought Harley so many little golden books. Just the other night, she pulled out the Batman one and she wanted me to read her the Batman one. And then she pulled out the Wonder Woman one and went, Wonder Woman. And she wanted to read Wonder Woman. And so she already recognizes the heroes, which makes me so happy. And at daycare, they have these like little capes that they just can put around their necks. When she goes to daycare for the past like 2 or 3 weeks, she walks in. First thing she does is grab the cape and puts it on. She leaves it on all day long. and she screams Super Harley, and it's the cutest darn thing in the whole world. And so you're right, just like, man, like the joy of watching them, especially embrace the things that we love, is just magical.
Now, has she been to a movie theater yet? Probably not.
Not really. So what we did was the last cruise we went on, they have a little movie theater on the ship.
Mm-hmm.
And so we went into that theater and we watched Inside Out 2 as a test to see how it would go. Because we're like, if it doesn't work out, we'll just leave. No biggie. We didn't pay for it. And we watched the whole movie. There were moments where she got a little restless and stuff, but
it's tough to get them to sit still at that age.
Yeah, she got through the whole thing. So that was a good first step. So I think that we're getting close. We think that maybe in November when Moana 2 comes out, we might take her to that because she loves Moana. So I'm sure she'll be into the second one. But yeah, we're getting close, but that was our first little dipping our toe into it.
Well, assuming they don't go a too mature route, I feel like there's going to be a Supergirl movie hitting right in the prime of being able to take her where she'll be aware and appreciative.
That's true. That's a good point. Yeah, I think by then she'll probably be okay. Again, assuming that the movie's appropriate.
Yeah, like I said, my son went to the movies with me all the time when he was 4 when Avengers came out, and he pretty much Man of Steel. He went and saw that with me, I think 3 or 4 times. So yeah, 4 or 5, I think is when they're really able to absorb what's going on the screen. Not that they can't, at Harley's age even, but by that age, they're a lot more cognitive about things,
For sure. Yeah. And I know that, some people will bring their kids Harley's age to the theater. And I think if your kid is more chill, that's probably fine. Harley is a lot of things. Chill is not one of them. And that's okay. We love her. So that's why we were like, well, let's see how it goes. But again, Inside Out 2, we got her to watch most of it. And yeah, sure, little moments here and there where she got, I don't even want to say bored. She just got restless. But yeah, we'll see. We'll see how it goes. I can't wait till she's old enough to take her to the movies. Because as soon as Batman's back on the big screen, we're going.
Heck yeah.
All right. So next email here, it's from our old pal, Julian Chan. And he says, hey, Andy and Batcasters, a very quick question for you. Given that Wolverine finally dons his mask with the white eyes and looks awesome, would you like Batman and Robin to have white eyes in The Brave and the Bold? Cheers, Jazzy Jules. Thanks, Julian. And so, yeah, this is a question that makes its rounds in the fan community. And I know you have not seen Deadpool and Wolverine, have you?
I have not.
You have not. But by now, it's probably all spoiled for you because now everything...
quite a bit of it is.
Everything's out there. But anyway, that's okay. That's on you. But have you seen Wolverine with the mask and the white eyes?
I have not seen the white eyes. I feel like I've seen like a I guess you'd call it like a distant shot with the mask on, like not anything up close.
Mm-hmm. Well, he wears the mask with the white eyes. It does look awesome. So what do you think? How do you feel about Batman and Robin having the white eyes?
I'm good either way. I'm not going to be mad if they don't do it, but if they do it, I think, yeah, that's pretty cool because, a lot of the versions that I've seen, on print and in animation have had that. So, why not do it in live action? And, to a degree, we kind of got it with BVS with the Dark Knight Returns armor, but that's not exactly the same thing.
Yeah.
So the more than anything, I would be more concerned about how the overall look is, especially with the white eyes and how they're going to present it. But yeah, I'm not opposed to giving it a shot if they have a good reason and a good way to do it.
Yeah, I'm the same. I don't feel super strongly about it. It's not one of those things as a fan where I'm like, someday give me the white eyes. I could take it or leave it. But the point is yeah, Wolverine, it looked good. So there's no reason they couldn't do it for Batman. So if they were to choose to go down that route, I say, yeah, let's do it. I'm all for it. All right, next message here is from Willis Ward. It says, hey guys, I have several unrelated questions that I've been meaning to ask. Some may see this as a long email, but it's not disorder long. Fair enough. He said, first of all, some time ago you were discussing voice actors, and I heard Frank Gorshin's name mentioned. Back in the late 70s, I recall watching the Adam West Batman series in reruns. My parents and I had gone on a trip to Reno, Nevada, where we were living in Northern California at the time. We were at dinner, and my father took me to meet someone. It happened to be Frank Gorshin. Unfortunately, I don't know if a picture exists at this point, but it made me wonder. Is there any actor from any Batman property that you've not met that you wish you could have or would like to meet? Second, this sort of relates to the recent Grim Grinning Host discussion about Halloween Horror Nights at Islands of Adventure with Marvel Superhero Island, and a side discussion about Batman at Universal. If you could design a Halloween Horror Nights house with a Batman villain, which villain or villains would you include? And finally, in the recent Comic-Con recap episode, there was a discussion about the upcoming Batman animated series that felt like it would be better off as an Elseworlds property. I've not watched any Elseworlds versions of Batman, but I wanted to know, has there ever been an Elseworld version where Bruce Wayne's parents did not die, but he still became Batman? If there hasn't been, what are your thoughts? Without his parents' death, what do you believe could be the catalyst to have Bruce become Batman? I appreciate all that you do and the hours of great entertainment that you provide. Willis Ward. Thank you, Willis. Always good to hear from you. Okay, let's take them one at a time. First of all,
he's putting us to work here. So
yes. First of all, how cool that you met Frank Gorshin. That
super cool.
is amazing, and love that. I love that as an adult you remember that. So cool. But the question is there someone from the Batman world you wish you could meet or would have been able to meet, Jamie?
I mean, where do you want me to start the list? Adam West and Burt Ward, Michael Keaton, Ben Affleck, Yvonne Craig.
Mm-hmm.
I Milks met Yvonne Craig and got a hug from her, and I am so bloody jealous of that. I can't even put it in words. I mean, I could go on and on. Lee Merriweather, Michelle Pfeiffer.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's so many. I mean, I could almost do an episode on each movie and TV show of like, these are the people that I wish I could have and would still meet.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's easy to just say select all because I'd pretty much like to meet any of them. If I were to be able to just choose one, I'd say Michael Keaton. You know, he was my Batman. He's still my favorite Batman. I would love to meet Michael Keaton. Not sure how I could make that happen, but that would be amazing.
I have met Eckhart, not Aaron Eckhart, like the police officer Eckhart.
Yes, Lieutenant.
I met him. Super nice guy. He was Porkins in Star Wars, obviously, and I met him at Star Wars Celebration, got his autograph. So I guess there's one checked off the list, I suppose.
Yep. All right. So if you could design a Halloween Horror Nights house with a Batman villain, who would you include?
I mean, come on. We're all thinking the same thing right now, right? Arkham Asylum and just throw them all in there.
I mean, yes. Absolutely.
I mean, that's a Halloween Horror Nights house everybody's lined up to get into. You thought the Ghostbusters lines were brutal 5 years ago. Shit.
Yeah. I mean, they did that.
What?
Yes. So it was only 1 year, maybe two, where Warner Brothers out in California, they did their own little Halloween Horror Nights on their backlot. Ironically, it was Catherine and I's first date.
How fitting.
Yep. That was our first date as we went and did. It was called Horror Made Here, and it was on the WB lot out in Burbank. And obviously the house I was most excited about was Arkham Asylum. So they did one for The Conjuring. They did one for It. It wasn't really a house. It was more of an outdoor trail. That was Freddy versus Jason. It was awesome. And then they did an Arkham Asylum. And then they did a couple other experiences that weren't necessarily haunted house. They did like an exorcist experience in the church on the back lot, which was really cool and creepy. They had a True Blood bar. It was a great event. We had a great time. But yes, there was a haunted house of Arkham Asylum. It was very much based on the game Arkham Asylum, so it was those versions of the characters. But yeah, I remember seeing Scarecrow, Joker, Harley. I I want to say like Killer Croc was in there. Yeah, I mean, like all the villains were in there. Yes, do that. That way you don't have to choose. And then the other low hanging fruit is Scarecrow, you know?
Yeah.
Scarecrow's fear gas is spread throughout Gotham, and now you're walking through Gotham where everybody is, you and everybody's hopped up on fear gas, and so everybody is all distorted and crazy, and you know, it's like a nightmare version of Gotham because you're on the fear gas.
Yeah. Well, Brendan shared a thing with us. I don't know, what was it? A couple months back, I think, of what is it? Movie World in Australia
Yeah.
are doing Deceased.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That looked awesome.
Yeah.
But I love the Deceased books anyway, which, you know, Tom Taylor virtually can do no wrong as far as I'm concerned. But bringing Deceased to life as a, you know, like horror houses or whatever, that just feels like it would be a fantastic time. Not sure I'm going to make the trip to Australia just for that. But
I mean, someday when I go to visit Brendan, we're going to Movie World. We have to. But if we can make it around Halloween, I'd be all for it. And then finally, I don't know of any Elseworlds where the Waynes survive. The only one I can think of is Flashpoint, where Bruce is the one who's killed.
Yeah.
And then the Waynes survive. But I can't think of any where the Waynes survive and then Bruce still becomes Batman.
None come to mind for me on that either.
I mean, I'm kind of surprised someone hasn't done it because, you know, there are so many different versions and spins on Batman. I'm surprised someone didn't go, well, what if he was Batman, but his parents were alive? None that I know of.
Well, I mean, they've kind of toyed around with this with Superman a lot. And of course, leaving Ma and Pa Kent alive is just a totally different dynamic because although they raised him to become the man that he is, that was not what, you know, kind of made him Superman. You know, in Bruce's case, the death of the parents are what drives him to reach that point. You know, if he doesn't lose the parents, it doesn't have this ultimate tragedy in his young life. What is his motivation at that point for becoming Batman? And is he the brutal instrument of justice that we know? Is he that vengeance? I don't think so. I'm sure a talented writer out there could certainly make a strong case and write that story. And, you know, I could read it and say yay or nay at that point. But for me, you know, they messed with Superman even more in that they brought Jor-El back during the Rebirth era. And I did not care for that at all.
Yeah.
So, you know, I'm not sure how I would react to it. Again, I'm sure there's a writer out there with an idea that's super talented that could make a compelling story with that. But, you know, for me, I'm not calling for that to happen, you know?
You know what it reminds me of is, I don't know if you've ever read it. I've never read the script, but I've read the treatment for the J.J. Abrams Superman movie. Because the premise is that Krypton did not explode. And so essentially there was going to be like a Krypton invasion of Earth at the end of the movie. And Lex Luthor was going to be like Superman's long lost Krypton brother and everything. Like, it sounded ridiculous. I'm glad it didn't get made, but yeah, it sounds like, it reminds me of that, where someone said, well, what if it was Superman, but Krypton didn't get destroyed? And it's like, well, that's kind of the whole thing that makes him Superman. But anyway. All right, got one last email here. This is from Brian. It says, hey guys, I hope the summer is going well. Andy, I wanted to congratulate you on the future Dick Grayson or Tim Drake this fall, and Jamie on your twin girls going to college. I recently listened and loved your X-Men franchise rewatch on Real Fans, even though I have to add, I did scream at my phone like a Karen who got her Starbucks order messed up when you ragged on Days of Future Past, because I love that one despite the issues with it. My question is this: much like the X-Men franchise that has a ton of missed potential, what are some of the biggest ones in comic book movies? Personally, I would say BVS, the 2011 Green Lantern film, Secret Invasion, and The Red Skull. Secondly, I went down to North Carolina recently to celebrate my friend and I's 40th birthday, yikes, and I wore a pop culture shirt every day of the week to mess with my friend who hates those types of shirts. So what are your favorite non-Batman pop culture shirts? Personally, I'd go with my McDowell's one, my Matt Foley motivational speaker, and my Jaws one that says, that's not funny at all, which always gets a high five from someone.
They have the golden arches. We have the golden arcs.
As always, thank you for the hard work, and I can't wait for spooky season. Thank you, Brian, and thanks for listening to the X-Men episode of Real Fans. It was really fun, and I'm sorry if we ragged on something that you love. I apologize. But okay, first question: comic book movies missed potential.
Oh, that's a loaded one. There's a whole episode of Real Fans right there in and of itself.
Yeah, no kidding. Well, I will say, I mean, I didn't watch Secret Invasion, so I can't speak to that. But I think the other examples you give, even though I love BVS, I know why you would say it, and I don't even disagree. The 2011 Green Lantern film, I like it more than most, but I also agree. Red Skull, I thought was freaking perfect in the first movie, but I think that the missed opportunity was that was it, and we didn't get him again until, was it Infinity War when he finally showed back up again? And at that point, we had kind of missed the boat on it. So yeah, I think your examples are good, but aside from that, Jamie, what springs to mind of some comic book movie missed opportunities?
Good gravy! I'm going to be here all night. You got any that could spring to your head? Like my brain is going 19 directions at once right now.
Oh man, I mean, I'm sure.
Well, here, let me fire this off. I'll just go ahead and give my hot take. Okay, the entire Infinity Saga post Avengers 1, say for Captain America, the first, or Captain America, the Winter Soldier, and Black Panther. I feel like they dropped the ball so bad on that. And I'm sorry for all of you who loved it, because I know it's pretty much everybody but me. But God damn it, guys. Thanos could have been so much better than he was in those movies. So much better. So much better. So yeah, that's probably going to be my chief one right there.
I mean,
where's Catherine?
I know.
That back for Catherine. She'll back me up on that.
I mean, I know maybe this is cheating, but God, like for me, the biggest missed opportunity is the X-Men franchise, because I love the X-Men. And if you go back and listen to that episode, like even the best of those movies still don't quite live up to the potential of the X-Men universe. And that is so damn frustrating. I'm not even the biggest Punisher fan, but I think it's crazy that they made 3 Punisher movies and they still couldn't figure it out. That's weird to me.
I've said for as long as I've known you and Paul Shirey, if you take all 3 Punisher movies and splice bits and pieces together, you'd have one pretty damn good Punisher movie. Because they've all got some shit going for them that I really like, and they've all got some shit going for them that I really don't.
I'll tell you, the one I like the most, and a lot of people hate it, is Warzone, because at least that one feels just sort of like unabashedly Punisher.
It's so much fun, and it does feel very much like the Garth Ennis Punisher run.
Yeah. But again, I know that's kind of a...
It's terrible. I know it's terrible. The villain is god-awful in the movie, but it's fun, and I like it.
Yeah. I mean, again, if I were going to pick one to watch, that's the one I would pick.
The rocket launcher scene still makes me laugh out loud every time.
I mean, as long as we're on there, the Tom Jane Punisher, like... I love Tom Jane. I love John Travolta. I love Roy Scheider. And that movie is not good. Like, oh, that one's frustrating because you had a lot of really good talent involved and it was not a good movie.
Yeah. They tried too hard to ground it, I think. But I like it. I enjoy it. But it's certainly far from a perfect film.
I'm trying to get other missed opportunities. You know what? I'll go this one because these are movies I do not hate, but...
the potential was there.
The potential. And that is the 2 Fantastic Four movies from 05 and 07.
I almost fired off with those first, and then Thanos sprung into my brain. So
yeah,
thank you for bringing it up, because I genuinely like those 2 movies. I don't love them. I don't think they're great. I think they're far from it, but I enjoy it. I actually like those movies. And I'm not a Fantastic Four fan by any stretch. So, I mean, I'm just watching them and taking them for what they are, but I certainly think improvements are there to be made, and hopefully Marvel Studios can, knock it out of the park with their version of FF. But I feel like I agree with you that those movies had potential to be something truly special, and instead we're just okay.
Yeah, that's just it. Like, I think they're both good, solid, like C pluses, but they had all the right pieces that they should have been really good. I thought the cast was great. I liked for the most part, all the designs, they just didn't give them anything to do. And that it's frustrating to me because I'm like, oh, those should have been even better than they were. I mean, honestly, a lot of those are like that. I will agree with you on I like Infinity War. Man, I'm gonna make no friends, but God, I feel like Endgame is just one massive missed opportunity, and everybody loves it. I don't love it. I don't love it.
Well, you know I don't. So,
But yeah, I'm sorry. I know that's again that's an unpopular opinion.
well, don't get me wrong. There are bits and pieces like I was just talking about. There's bits and pieces of those movies that I truly love. The battle scenes in those movies I think are really solid. But again, I feel like, and again, I have a super strong attachment to Thanos, and I did well before he ever showed up in the Avengers post-credit sequence. I have loved Thanos since I was in my early teens. And I feel like they betrayed his character. And I will never forgive Marvel Studios for that. Because, as I've said before, he's one of my major guys in the Marvel universe. Like, he's in contention for my favorite Marvel character. Certainly my favorite Marvel villain. And I'm probably never going to get another live action version of him on a screen again in my lifetime.
Yeah.
So that really just disappoints the shit out of me.
Yeah. No, I understand.
And I don't want to be the gatekeeper that says, well, it should have been more like the books and this and that and the other thing. That's not even what it's about. I know they're going to make changes to that. I know it's not going to be a panel for panel adaptation of Thanos Quest and the Infinity Gauntlet and that whole saga in the comics. But damn it, I don't feel like they did his character proper justice. And I'm just not cool with that. So he looked great. I'll give him that much.
Yeah. I was gonna take it back to the DC side of the street, so it doesn't feel like we're just harping on Marvel, because there's plenty of things on on the DC side. I mean, somewhat recently, Shazam 2. Yeah. I didn't hate it, but I do think it was a missed opportunity because of how good the first one was, and the second one I was like, it should have been sort of an even better situation, and it wasn't. It was just okay, and I think that was a bit of a bummer.
Big step back in quality, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I would. It's another movie that I seem to like more than most, but Wonder Woman 1984, I like it. But again, coming off of the first one, it's a little bit of a letdown. I think that's fair.
I suppose, but I mean, she tried so hard to make it different, and I at least respect the effort. If you didn't love the results, at least respect the effort that they were trying to do something very different than anything that had been done before. In my opinion.
Yeah. I agree.
Not like everything about it, like you can make the dopey villain turned seductress villain, that whole thing. But for the DC side of things, for me, oh God, it was just on the tip of my tongue, and I was going to say it. Andy, I'm sorry. I love you. The Flash. I feel like there was so much left on the table with what they could have done with that movie.
I was kind of waiting for you to say that, honestly, because as much as I love that movie, I don't even disagree with that statement.
Like, I watched it, I don't know, probably last month sometime, maybe it was right before I went on vacation. So it would have been like toward the end of June. And I watched it, and it didn't move the needle one way or the other for me. The things that I like in that movie, I still really like. The things in that movie I don't like, I still really don't. And it almost made me sad watching it that time, because that is a movie that I should love every bit as much as you. And I don't. And I hate that, but I got to be honest and realistic. It's just not the movie that I was hoping for. Yeah. And I know you can say things about expectations and what have you, but watching that movie, I just feel like there was so much there left untapped and not delved into that just could have raised it to Hall of Fame levels. And it's just not there for me. To me, it's just a pretty middle of the road average movie.
No, fair enough. I get
with
it.
Some really great parts to it. Your points about the relationship with his mom and, some of the action and, seeing some of the stuff with Keaton, there's certainly things about it I do love, but as a whole, I don't love it.
Well, I believe in, this, you said that this question could lead to a whole episode, and how long we've been talking about it. Yeah. I do believe, because before The Flash came out and we knew that it was this multiversal hopping adventure, that allowed our imaginations to go wild about the possibilities of what that could be. And that wasn't something they truly took full advantage of in the movie. I still think it's a great movie and I still love the movie. But as far as like the promise of, embracing and paying homage to the multiverse of DC on film, it only does that a little. And what they do, I enjoy, but it didn't take full advantage of that. And ironically, Deadpool and Wolverine, which just came out, and I really, really liked. I think that like of all these multiverse hopping movies, of which there have now been many, I feel like that one, as far as just the pure fun of taking advantage of the multiverse, I think that Deadpool and Wolverine took advantage of it the best.
Are we counting Everything Everywhere All at Once in this too, or is that
Well,
separate?
that's a separate. That's
All
its
right,
own
all right.
thing. You know what I'm saying? But I'm saying between like
I get it.
multiverse
I
of
know.
madness and oh god, so even into the Spider-Verse and everything. I think Deadpool and Wolverine is the one that's like, oh, we get to do whatever we want, so let's do whatever we want. Whereas some of those other ones were like, well, we could, but let's not. If that makes sense.
No, it does.
And yet, from an emotional standpoint, I still think The Flash is the better movie. But as far as just like pure multiversal shenanigans, Deadpool and Wolverine, I think, really took advantage of it.
When it hits Disney Plus, I'll find out.
Yeah. And then anyway, the other question was pop culture shirts. Well, Brian, I only wear pop culture shirts. My dresser is literally overflowing, and every 6 months I try to force myself to get rid of some because it's a habit and I can't help myself. I literally have them sorted by not genre, but by IP. I have a whole drawer that's nothing but Universal Monsters. I have a whole drawer that's half Batman, half Jaws. I have another drawer that's like half ET, half theme parks. I have like 10 Twister shirts. How could you even find 10 Twister shirts? I found them. So yeah,
Only
like
you. Only you.
don't even get me started. I found out when I worked at Disney, I found out after the fact that like my coworkers had a game where they were like, oh, we've never seen Andy wear the same t-shirt twice. And I didn't even know about it until someone was like, hey, so which one are you wearing today? I was like, what are you talking about? He's like, your t-shirts. I'm like, oh, I'm wearing this one. He goes, yeah, you have like the craziest collection of t-shirts. And I was like, I didn't know anyone noticed. But yeah, so it's, I have many, many, many.
Some of my favorites, the one I'd like to wear a lot right now because she's awesome, is I have a shirt that said, I asked God for strength and courage, so he sent my wife, and it's like a silhouette of Wonder Woman behind it.
Oh,
I have a bright screaming ass yellow Jaws t-shirt that's a cover swipe from Amazing Spider-Man 129, which is the first appearance of the Punisher, and it's Brody holding up the rifle and the Jaws ship and lettering and everything all around it. Just it looks
have
like
that
the
one.
cover of that.
I have that one. Yep.
It's a great shirt. I've got a Godzilla World Tour shirt, and on the back it's all the cities that he's destroyed. That's a fun one. I don't know if it's still a relevant thing in pop culture anymore, but there was was it Echo or something like that? They had the little rhino. You know what I'm talking about? Echo clothing.
No, I don't.
Okay.
Sorry.
Well, I have one that instead of the little rhino, it's an AT-AT and it says Echo Base on it.
Okay.
But it's the same logo style. I have a Green Lantern shirt where he's like flying in the Michael Jordan pose and it says Air Jordan. Big fan of that one.
Nice. Who is it in the Michael Jordan pose?
Hal Jordan. Green Lantern.
Okay. I have one that is Michael Myers in the Michael Jordan pose, but instead of a basketball, it's a jack-o'-lantern.
Nice.
Yeah, it's good.
I don't know if I have a single Michael Myers t-shirt.
Oh yeah, I got a bunch of those too. I got a great one. I got a great one last year that it's like it looks like a video game, like a fighting game, like Street Fighter 2, and one half of the shirt is Laurie Strode, the other half is Michael Myers, and they both have like their life bar above them.
Nice.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
I don't know. I'm like you. I have an entire row of the bars in my closet is filled, and another one is probably almost half filled with nothing but printed geek t-shirts.
That's awesome. Well, Brian, I'm jealous of your Mrs. Taft shirt that says, "That's not funny. That's not funny at all." I need to find that. I need to find that one.
That's one of those that, like the true ones get it. You know what I mean?
Yep. I have one I just got rid of actually because it had lived its life, but it was literally just text and it just said, if you say barracuda, everyone says, huh? What? But if you say shark, we've got a panic on our hands on the 4th of July. And that was it. It was just the text, but it was like over 10 years old. So I think it's time to finally say goodbye.
I hope you wore an anchor jacket over that.
It had little anchors around the,
oh my God, did it?
Around the text. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I'm surprised you didn't frame that one and hang it up.
Sometimes you got to thank it for its service and let it go. All right. Well, let's close the mailbox. If you got something for the Wayne Manor mailbox, you can send that to Holy BatCast at rf4rm.com. But that will do it for this episode. Jamie, thanks for making the time. It was fun catching up and talking about some Batman animation.
It was, man. I enjoyed talking about this show. I'm kind of anxious. I've avoided your thoughts on it, haven't asked for any, and I've avoided giving mine until the episode because I kind of wanted to come into everything fresh with each other. But I'm anxious to see your reaction to some of these episodes going forward because I believe your opinion is either going to remain unchanged or is going to improve. I don't think it's going to slide back very much.
That's great. And honestly, I haven't really shared my thoughts. Saving it for this, I guess.
Right on.
Cool. All right. Anywhere you want people to follow you? Does it matter?
Periodically on Letterboxd, Real Fans Groups on Facebook. That's pretty much the extent of my footprint these days.
Fair enough. I mean, and same Letterboxd. You mentioned Scarathon is upon us.
Yep.
Just a few weeks. And so
I'm going to try and you're going to screw me up. I know the Real Fan schedule is going to wake up a little bit here in a few weeks. But you're going to screw me up because you're going to say, we have to watch this 17-movie franchise for the podcast. And I'm going to spend the first month of the Scarathon trying to watch shit I've never seen before or haven't seen in like 40 years.
Let's do all 10 Saws.
Yeah.
Like, what's one that has just a ridiculous amount? We'll do Chucky. We can do Child's Play.
You can do that one without me because I'm not into those very much.
I don't know. We'll see. We have not thought that. I've not thought that far ahead. I'll be honest. But
right. But anyway, yeah, I'm going to try and squeeze in all fresh, all new, or very faded memory stuff for the first half, and then I'll get on the legendary stuff on the back half.
Well, to be fair, nothing will be as many as the 13 X-Men movies.
I'm really glad I rewatched those last year, so I did have to rewatch them all again this year.
Anyway, so yeah, folks, if you want to keep up with that, again, the Real Fans Show, we just did that X-Men rewatch. Our summer movie recap will be here before we know it as well. And then it'll be time for holiday fun. So, yep, go make sure you're following that show too. Thank you as always for joining us and for downloading this show. Please do follow or subscribe to Holy BatCast wherever you get your podcast. Something else you can do that if you love the show, you can support us. It doesn't cost a penny. All you have to do is leave us a nice message or a nice review. That would be awesome. A 5-star review really goes a long way, and we would really appreciate that. Again, you can find Holy BatCast on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. Just search for Holy BatCast. If you've got something for the Wayne Manor mailbox, you can send that to holybatcast at rf4rm.com. Our theme music was created by the talented Gaur Venkateswar. You can find his work at gvtunes.com. And that will do it. So on behalf of Jamie, I've been Andy. We'll see you next time. Same bat time, same bat channel. Holy BatCast is not affiliated with Warner Brothers or DC Entertainment. The views and opinions shared by the participants are theirs and theirs alone and do not represent the companies or organizations they happen to work for.
So now I'm trying to remember which episode it was, but there was one of the episodes of the Cape Crusader fires a shot right across the bow of Brett Ratner.
Oh, really?
Yes. I mean, it was not even subtle about it if you've ever heard Olivia Munn tell the story.
Oh, no. Gross.
So the guy's like
heard that story.
eating shrimp and wiping the sauce on his shirt and all that stuff. And when she kind of rejects him, he says, well, you're really not that good looking anyway. And like beat for beat, this thing happens in Cape Crusader, and I'm like, wow, you guys went after Brett Ratner. I want to pat you on the back for that.
Oh my God, that was in the
amazing.
first episode. That was in the Penguin episode.
Okay. I couldn't remember if it was that one or the Catwoman episode, but I was like, well done, guys. I almost rewound the sequence just because I thought it was so funny.
I didn't even make that connection, but wow.